I'm putting together an aluminum tote tray today, a pretty good size one. It's going to go on the top of a welding cart that I built some while back. That's what I had in mind when I built the cart. I left a flat surface on the top, thinking I would build a large tote tray for it to hold grinders, grinding wheels, sanding discs, whatnot. So we'll talk about some tips along the way. Let's get into it. All right, these are the end pieces that kind of taper up for the handle. I'm going to drill a hole with these little step bits. And I'm going to also use some beeswax on them. I'll put a link to both these products in the description of this video. You can learn part numbers and things like that if you want. The step bit, along with some beeswax, works really good. I had some beeswax, used some long time ago, and I don't know what happened to it, and I actually forgot how well it worked. It works a lot better than bar soap, and really speeds up the cutting, keeps a hard rock or a sanding disc from loading up. Makes a huge difference in the speed of the cut. Just doing a little deburring here and making sure that everything's smoothed out. Again, with a little beeswax on a sanding disc. Now, I don't have a sheet metal brake, so I'm having to do all outside corner joints to make this tote tray. But the cuts didn't take long. And a lot of times you can actually weld something quicker than you can, cut notches and break and things like that. But the best way to do it is to have broke over corners instead of welded joints wherever you can. I don't have that equipment. Need a lot of tacks. This is 080, 2mm thick, 3003 aluminum. And I'm going to tack it wherever I get a good fit, and then I'm going to come back in between and add a little spot tack, trying to make my tacks smaller than the final weld will be. So I'm tacking with 1.6mm, that's 1/16 thick filler, and then I'm going to weld it with 332, 2.4mm. This is a strong hand clamp I'm using here, and it's getting it pretty close enough anyway that I can use the cup to smash up against there and use it to kind of hold the joint closed, prop it against there, and then get a little tack. And sometimes you have to just puddle a little bit and stab some filler wire in there to get the two pieces to join. Probably get a tack every couple of inches on this thing. Just I don't want to take a chance on something opening up on me. And sometimes it's very helpful to use a little backing, some kind of little flat bar angle. If it's hot rolled angle though, I would recommend cleaning it down to shiny bright metal. It really can mess that puddle up if you arc off on the hot rolled mill scale and then pull some of that stuff into the aluminum puddle. I keep lots of little blocks like this laying around for backing and for propping on and for a weight and things like that. Come in handy. This is a piece of 1-inch aluminum tubing that I just had laying around, and my thoughts were I'm going to trim this and leave a little bit hanging over the ends so that I'll just run a bead without filler metal. And that wound up not working too great. I got one tack on here, and I probably should have left about half that much hanging over. You'll see what I'm talking about in just a second. I'll weld this thing out, and this is sped up quite a lot, but just to get the arc started, I keep a piece of filler metal in my hand. I mean, it's washing in there okay, but I left way too much lip there to make it look nice. Next time, I'll leave less. I'm using a 332 diameter rod here. Normally I would use 40-43 on this. This is 3003 aluminum tread plate, and I would normally use 40-43 rod. I'm using a 332 size just because I have to feed a lot less. A good rule of thumb there is not to use too much larger filler rod diameter than the thickness of whatever you're welding, when you're welding sheet metal, that is. Some days I can go a long time without duffing my electrode, and some days I can't. But the best thing to do when you do that is stop, clean your electrode up, put a nice clean tip in there. I should probably have taken a nice clean stainless wire toothbrush and cleaned that area up before I started back, but I didn't. I started out using a standard number 5 cup here, and I got a little contamination. I was pulling a little air into the argon, so I switched over to a gas lens. And on an outside corner joint, you know, it kind of does split the flow a little bit, and I think a 7 or an 8 gas lens does a pretty good job on that. If this was the inside corner or a T-joint, a number 5 standard would work just fine. Right here I'm just adding, you know, you can see I'm roughly adding a dip per second. I'm trying to move ahead roughly 1/8 of an inch per second. And you know, if I was more used to this, a little bit out of practice to be honest, I would go just a little bit faster. This is obviously sped up. You can see I'm using the smooth side down, and I hope you can see how nicely that TIG finger is just sliding along the thing there and letting me, you know, letting my finger stay cool and let me slide along smooth at the same time. That's a 17 style air-cooled torch that I'm using, but I do have the stubby gas lens kit on it that lets me use this style gas lens. That's just what I like. Alright, well, we're close to being all wrapped up here. I'm going to load it up with grinders in a minute. I got quite a few grinders, at least 10 I guess. It's a Metabo 6-inch, a little cheap Ryobi grinder that I keep a flap disc on, a 4-inch Makita that I keep a flapper adapter on so I can run little sanding pads. And I'll figure out exactly which wheels and which attachments and which grinders to keep in there as I go. But that's probably, you know, half of my grinders anyway. I have way too many grinders, said no welder ever. I support these videos with sales from my store at weldmonger.com.